Hello, so today we're going to be talking about the new moon we have coming up on July the 14th. It's a new moon in the sign of Cancer, and it's going to happen at 21 degrees and 59 minutes, so almost 22 degrees, and it will take place at 10:44 a.m. British Summer Time, so please do adjust wherever you are in the world. While I'm talking, it would be really useful for you to have your natal chart to hand. If you have it, please print it off or have it on your phone. If you don't have one and you'd like one, I'm going to leave the link below here that you can go to my website and you create one for yourself. And they're always so useful when I'm talking, so you can see what's going to be happening and where for you. So this particular new moon in Cancer, it's in its own sign. So the moon is ruled by Cancer and it's in Cancer. It's also going to be intertwined with Mercury that is retrograde. And so it's going to retrograde between 30th of June to 23rd of July. So it's going to happen for a little bit longer. And we also have planet Neptune that has just turned retrograde as well, and it'll be there for the next 5 months, 7th of July to 12th of December. So there's an internal script that has been running, but there is so much noise out there, you probably have not had a chance to tune it out and sit with it until right now. You see, we often run on autopilot, ingrained behaviors, needs, insecurities, all unconsciously running the show. But retrogrades are really good at forcing the inner sight, which then becomes the outer change. So when we look at Cancer energy, so what was I reading recently by Dawn Bedrogi? That the moon really represents the past as seen through the present moment, with the sun being the future as seen through the present moment. And you've got this nostalgic value with the moon, where we can kind of reflect and look back, and we have that really emotional connection with it. Jeffrey Wolf Green also sees the moon in Cancer as the ego and our conscious awareness of ourselves as individuals. So not just that we're reacting to our environment, but that we see consciously that we have our own dialogues and stories and inner worlds that take place. What I suppose is more commonly known is that Cancer is very much the mother of the zodiac and associated with all the mothering kind of tendencies. So the one that holds us up, the one that we have that emotional connection with, that co-regulation of our emotion, that senses and intuits our needs and provides for us, that tends to our wounds and our tears even. It's the energy of care, of nourishment, and of connection, family connection, familiar connection, bonding. So in evolutionary astrology, as I said, Cancer is often seen as the ego. It's where we understand ourselves within our own consciousness. And we can be aware that the needs that we have are not necessarily practical or logical. They're more emotional needs, and if we dig beneath that, they're very much attached to our own sense of personal safety. So this energy, I kind of always have to have a little visual, is a bit like sitting at home with your unbrushed hair, you've got no makeup on, you've got your PJs on, your favorite slippers, and you're not, it's not about performance, it's about who we are privately when we just go, you know, let it go, who we are at our core very naturally. Now, my dad is a Cancer Sun and a Cancer Venus, and I often call him the homebody. He's just one of those people that is just totally just loves being at home, and he has lots of different things that he does at home with the garden, and he has just quite a big shared that he does a lot of tasks with, but he loves being at home. He loves being really comfortable, and he's very, very, very close to all of his family members. And that's pretty much how Cancer is in a nutshell. So as this new moon hits, I want you to really focus on what Cancer energy may be more apparent for you, and really, really something that you're going to be focused on. So nostalgia and sentiment, or formed instincts, attachment patterns, and our sense of belonging in terms of safety, but also sense of belonging within our clans, our family tribes. Your inner home, your private inner world, and your inner child, where you feel safe and mostly nurtured in an emotional sense. Also, given that Cancer does attach to the gut and our sensitivity and intuition, so subtle signals in the gut and that kind of inner sense of knowing and intuition. And also our physical home, the place that we call home, our abode, our family, our clan, where we can kind of really be ourselves and who we're most bonded with. And if we consider the shadow side of Cancer, because all of them could obviously come up for us to pay more attention to, I think what's most obvious with Cancer is that the energy is very subtle. So it's not like Leo kind of let's be loud, or Aries let's be kind of bold and brass about it. It's very much an energy that's felt within the body, and so it can be the case with Cancer that you have more of a passive aggressiveness rather than an overt aggressiveness. It may be that there's with emotional withdrawal, so withdrawing into the typical Cancerian shell, shutting down. That means like going silent, shutting down on the communications, and even expecting other people just to know how you're feeling and where you're at rather than kind of communicating with them. Clinging to the past, so nostalgia that becomes more of a trap, maybe replaying old wounds. And as we have Mercury in the equation for this new moon, I think there's definitely going to be a strong pull towards what has happened in the past, what didn't happen in the past, what was said, what was not said, what was done, what was not done, and just these emotions maybe bubbling up that link to something in our past story. I do think there is quite a strong loyalty with Cancer energy, but often staying loyal to something that's actually outdated or worn away, or having an emotional connection to someone where it isn't reciprocated. As this is definitely the mothering energy, we have as part of the mother, our natural makeup is to be highly protective. And so there can be this kind of almost guardedness that can happen in Cancer energy. You know, this fierce guarding or defense mechanism. And it's absolutely fine and quite healthy to be kind of protective of ourselves, but if we're so protective to the point that we are shutting down our heart, or we're not allowing people to even have an opportunity to build trust and get close to us, then we can actually really, really kind of get caught up in our shell and quite shut off and shut down. Caretaking as a control mechanism. So, you know, Cancerian energy is fantastic for being a natural caretaker and looking out and looking after others. But you can find that maybe giving too much, or over nurturing, or overly attaching, you know, like attaching to the apron strings and not allowing for some freedom and individual growth, which can also set you up for dependency patterns. Mood-driven decision-making, so decisions that are made from emotions only without having a chance to think about them practically or logically at the same time. These can be reactions that are from more of a fear-based state, or perhaps an insecurity or an emotional need. Another one is feeling so much that logic does not appear at all. So there are some of the kind of the typical shadow side, and obviously if you are quite Cancerian yourself, take a look at your chart and see where Cancer is in your chart. Do you have anything in the sign of Cancer? Do you have anything in the 4th house? Do you have anything that's attached to the moon? Do you have moon in a sign like Scorpio that would be a lot more intensified? Is it in a square or a difficult aspect to another planet, especially a personal planet in your chart? Or have you got challenges from your moon to something that's in your 4th house? So if we take a look at the chart, and I'm going to pop it up here on the screen for you, you'll notice that we've got the interplay of planets there with the Sun and Moon, and then Mercury at 19 there in part of its retrograde. And we've also got Mars and Uranus, which were conjunct, which was quite an explosive conjunction, which is now starting to separate. Mars at 10 and Uranus at 4 degrees of Gemini, so that's looking a little bit better. And then we've got Neptune there at 4 degrees of Aries, which is in retrograde and very newly retrograde. And then we've got quite a lot happening roughly around those 4 degrees. So obviously you've got Neptune there at 4, you've got Uranus there at 4. You've also got Pluto there, retrograde as well, with Juno, also retrograde, 4 degrees, and Juno at 6. So 4 is a very distinct number right now, but it means they're all in very active in terms of their aspect connections. But so if we focus a little bit on Mercury and how Mercury can show up with this new moon. So with Mercury being a lot more linear, the linear mind, categorization, accumulation of our thoughts, how we communicate, how we think, we're going to find that the likelihood is that our thoughts and feelings are quite connected at this time. Whether that will be a positive or negative really remains to be seen, and you need to see how it impacts on other things in your chart. But in a positive sense, that can be feeling your emotions and being able to understand them, feed them through your mind, and even be able to communicate quite clearly about what your emotional needs are with other people. So that can be an absolute blessing. On a slightly more negative sense, you might find that it's very easy for your thoughts to run back through old memories, old emotional experiences that you've had. It may have you feeling quite down, quite sad, quite tearful. Mercury is also pretty good at playing tricks on us, and so those emotions might not be a complete representation of where you're at right now, and retrogrades always tend to be a bit confusing in terms of communication anyway. We do know that with Mercury retrograde, those miscommunications can come up with things like, travel. So just making sure that you leave plenty of enough time, that you make sure if you're driving by car that you're all fueled up and ready, and you've got your maps, or you've got maps on your phone, or the sat-nav system all working. Making sure that if you need to be there at a certain time or a certain place, that you doubly check time and dates and things, because it's very easy to get mixed up. And also in terms of communications, maybe things like your messages or your emails, double check them, triple check them, make sure, read them all through, make sure they have a lot of clarity. Sometimes what I do is, if I have to write something that's quite important, I'll write it in a first draft, and I'll go back over and edit it, and I'll normally sit on it a minimum of 24 hours, usually a few days, and read through it again to make sure that, yeah, what I want to say is there and exactly how I want to say it. You could find yourself right now pulled back into old family dynamics, maybe old family pains that have happened, old emotional narratives. Maybe there's been times within yourself you've had certain self conversations, or with other people you've had certain conversations that have gone down a certain route, and it's a route that you know you don't want to go down. So you might find yourself revisiting those, and it's always an opportunity to test where your growth is. Have you learned from the past? Do you realize now that it's a pattern, and a pattern that you don't want to repeat? What can you do differently? So you might find your mind circling a lot over old ground, and those feelings kind of coming up in the body. And it's a great space to kind of let them happen, and that you don't always need to fix everything right away. And that during retrogrades, I would recommend that you kind of just pause in that space for a few weeks. Give yourself an opportunity to assess yourself from an emotional viewpoint, and where you feel safe, and maybe what you need, what you feel you need to do in order to feel safe. Or maybe it's where you've been telling yourself that you don't care about something, or you don't care about someone, and this is the mind taking over, wanting to pull you away from your emotions. But you realize during this time that in actual fact, you really do. So it's a great time for insights, but not necessarily a great time for action. Also, bear in mind that this new moon is also square to another outer planet, and this outer planet is Saturn, that's at 14 degrees of Aries. And it is a tad wide, but it still counts. And so whenever we see, especially a personal planet in a square to Saturn, we know there's going to be some hard work. We know that there's going to be a block or a challenge or something here that gives for an opportunity for us to grow, to mature, or to understand responsibilities. So usually with Saturn in a challenging aspect, you can't just have what you want, you can't just have it straight away. You have to kind of earn it. And I think when we've got, Aries, Saturn in Aries, there's a lot of kind of courage attached to this. Definitely, Aries would normally be quite instinctive and in the moment. In fact, it's more about learning through motion, so it tends to act and then think about it later on. Saturn's definitely going to drag that a little bit, and so, it's going to, where Aries would normally just stand up and go for something, Saturn tends to say, pull it back a little bit. Not necessarily a bad thing, you know. Is this a time to fight? Is this a time to move? And so it gives you a chance to really more deeply consider what courage is. And also in Aries, and I spoke about this for in past podcasts and in my posts, about the idea of identity and of understanding who I am, Aries being the I am energy. And I think with Saturn there, it's like growing into who you are, because Aries takes us into this point of becoming. I am becoming who I am in every moment. And with Saturn, what you're becoming can be maturer, older, wiser. And so, you might be saying a little bit of a goodbye to some of your younger self at this point in time. Definitely emotional maturity is another theme. And then we've got Pluto. And Pluto, wow, is so active in the sky for this new moon. It's unbelievable. So it's in retrograde motion, so it's kind of more of an internalized energy. It's in a conjunction to Juno, which is deemed to be the committed partnership. Also in retrograde, it's then in a sextile aspect to Neptune, newly retrograde. It's trining Uranus and Mars, both in Gemini, and it's opposing Jupiter in Leo. And they're all very close together, 4 degrees, 6 degrees, 3 degrees. Really tight aspects here. Now, as a general rule, sextiles and trines tend to be a little more opportunistic and flowing, and oppositions usually tell us that it's something that's coming at us from the outside. So it's something that's happening in our world rather than coming from internal, or it's coming from someone else, perhaps reflecting something that we need to learn. As always with Pluto, the aim is transformation. And that transformation happens through a process, and the process tends to be very phoenix-like in that there needs to be a death and rebirth. And as part of that death piece, there's like a purging that happens, or something that I call the 5 whys. So when you get a greater and deeper understanding of yourself, you then appreciate what needs to go. And if something needs to go, you've got kind of this green light from the universe now saying you can purge all of this stuff that does not serve your greater good or yourself in its becoming. Get rid of it and power yourself up. And that process sounds wonderful, but it can be particularly painful, because often with Pluto, those things that we need to purge are things that have become a part of our makeup. You know, Pluto being naturally a water sign, and the deeper emotions. So these are things that we've really pushed down, we've really buried, the deeper emotions that we have, our deep soul desires that we have. And so, you know, there can be a little bit of a battle when we need to get rid of certain things. With that Uranus and Mars in Gemini, it is a trine aspect, but let's just be aware here that even though trines are flow, it will flow very easily between those planets, good or bad, positive or negative. So this is a lot of air energy. Pluto and Juno are both in the sign of Aquarius. It's in that trine to Gemini. So this is very much kind of mental realm, higher self, thought patterns, communication patterns, and also Uranus being the sword of truth. So there could be some very kind of harsh truths that come up for us as well. So I'm purposely keeping this just a little bit shorter today, but there is a lot of really yummy material in there too. What I want to do is leave you with a couple of things before I finish. So one is some questions for reflection. There are so many questions for reflection on the blog post. I'll leave the link below, but just for now I want to pick out 3. So let me go. 1, 2, 3. What emotional truth have I been circling but avoiding naming? Which emotional pattern from my family system am I ready to release? I'm saying family system, but that could be family history. Where am I protecting myself too much, and where maybe not enough? That's an interesting one. So plenty more questions for reflection on the blog post. Do read them through. They do get your mind kind of in the right space before the new moon. I also have a few rituals for you. Again, there are tons on the blog post, but I want to give you just one. So let's pick out one really good one here. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. So Cancer symbol is the crab. So we see it as the shell, the hard outside and the soft kind of underbelly that goes in. And one area that that is kind of important for Cancer to work on is it's there around boundaries, around emotional boundaries. And so here's an opportunity for you to write down or think about or type somewhere one boundary that you feel requires more work, more strengthening, and maybe one that's the opposite, that maybe needs some softening. And then to make a pledge to yourself to commit to both of these equally over the next 3 to 6 months, to really do the work on them. So write them down so you have them there in writing. Say them out loud, you know, keep them in your system, and really do focus on them in your everyday life. And bear in mind, every behavior takes some time to stick. Okay, so all the links are below for you. Thank you so much for listening.